Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And so I am going to take off this covering symbolically. And as I tell you a story as I begin, I was a young, single woman, graduated from university and was in the thick of serving the community. And one day, from a faith perspective, I said a small prayer, not overactivated, I wasn't jumping up and down. I said, today would be a good day to be married to the husband of my youth. Within 3 months or so of that prayer, I had my first conversation with this young man with a little bit of backdrop. He would have come up to me one day and was asking some questions, and I did something that was unlike me. I was in the mode of serving, and I stepped outside of my familiar normal and said, would you like my number? He called me, and within 2 weeks of our first conversation on January the 30th, we had our first conversation. That was 2005. 2 weeks later, he proposed. 3 months later, we were married. Do the math. 19 years later, we are here. Congress of Black Women, come on and honor this young man. Faith-filled is what I call him. He is the most incredible father and friend ever, and the way he covers me. This is Sans Façon, his brand product. Thank you. We might be moving into a moment of awareness, and Miss Monique, so good. Revolution starts with revelation. And I say it this way, every good question is the root of a good revelation. And so as you listen in today, I want you to listen to some of the questions that I ask you and really take to heart that you are revolutionizing from the inside out. It means radical change to sustain this successful life that all of us deserve to live. When I was a baby, I struggled with an illness that, among other things, robbed me of my audible voice. Can you give yourself permission to be in awe of me right now that I'm speaking to you? For those of us who are caregivers or mothers, we know that the way that babies indicate need is by crying. I did not have that ability. My family would say to me this way, that when I was in need, I would sound something like, so if someone wasn't present enough, intentional enough, conscious enough to pay attention to what was mute beneath the surface, what was silenced beneath the surface, my needs would have gone unmet. I would have died silent. Go ahead and put your hand on your chest and consciously say to yourself, I will not die silent. I will not die lonely. I will not die silent. I had the incredible grace of a grandmother. My mother and other family members, my grandmother particularly, had a knack of listening beneath the surface beyond what I could audibly say. And because she was able to gift that to me, I truly believe that in this experience, in fact, it was my first experience of trauma. And so if we redefine trauma maybe by what is commonly known, trauma is not the event so much, but how our body adapts and internalizes the wound of the event. And so my body internalized the wound of that illness and adapted through silence to survive. If you've ever seen someone in a boxing match, for example, and there's a knockout, and that knockout, that hard hit, the brain goes into silence seeming deadness to survive. If you've ever seen someone in a knockout and that knockout lasts for more than about 30 seconds or so, what happens? Talk back to me. You trust yourself. What happens? Yes. Most of us would know by just observation that this person is in trouble far beyond what that person could say. And so I truly believe that my grandmother gifted me at such a young age as a baby with the gift of listening far beyond what is audible, listening far beyond what we can hear with our ears. She revolutionized my life by listening to the silence within me. I truly believe that that's when my journey with psychotherapy started. Today in my life, I have the incredible privilege of saying to those that I meet on a daily basis, it sounds like. And when I give words to what I'm hearing from this ear beneath the surface, I get to come back, yes, I didn't think about it that way. All of us deserve to be heard beneath the good looking, the hairdo, the wonderful dress. And so at the top of the pandemic, I was in a spiritual moment, part of my passion. And I so appreciate you, Lady Nicole. You are such an incredible woman. Miss Doris, I honor you, and Miss Angie, and all of you. I truly honor you today. At the top of the pandemic, I had a vision. For those of you who are spiritually plugged in, you will understand this context of vision. I saw a field. It was a field of people that was so far-reaching. And as I was standing before that field, the people in the field appeared stuck in the field. Cultural people, spiritual people. They were trying to move, but were stuck in the field. And then as I kept standing in front of the field as an invitational force, a few people stepped beyond the boundaries of the field. And when they did, they had a gasp. It was, this is possible. And then they started to share with me about the lack of permission that they had held in their heart for so long. The lack of permission that they experienced in community for so long. And in an integrated spiritual context, the lack of permission that they experienced in the gospel that is meant for freedom had been internalized as bondage. And then I heard from this perspective, the harvest is plentiful. The need for inner healing in our community is plentiful. The need for healing in relationship and marriage is plentiful. But the judgment, the silence that has been historical has blocked us from that. And in that moment, I did in my capacity, all of us have capacity, I said, send me. I've been a psychotherapist for over 23 years. I then put faith to action and launched Legacy Moments Academy. Legacy Moments Academy is in its third year with a Heal Without Judgment. I launched globally, and to date we've reached globally, supporting individuals who might have never had this lower barrier opportunity to show up for relational inner healing. Now I'm going to invite you to stand with me, because in this process is when I received the impetus to write The Heart of a Good Thing. And for those who yet are stuck in that field that I saw, the instruction was to send this resource into the field so that everybody who deserves truly to show up for this relational wellness can access it. I'm going to invite you, if you can, to put your hand on your chest. And when you do that, I want you to see that you're symbolically connecting with yourself, because what the past and the injuries of the past has done to all of us is separated us from ourselves. That's the characteristic of trauma. It separates us from ourselves. Go ahead ahead and close your eyes if you can, or soften your gaze. I ask you this question. I begin the heart of a good thing by asking this question. Can you imagine who you would be if who you were created to be was never interrupted? Can you imagine who you would be if who you were created to be was never interrupted? She is still in there. Go ahead and see her if you can. Give yourself permission to turn up the volume on her voice. Go ahead and take a deep breath. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes really slowly. And take your seat. I encourage you to through the heart of a good thing, with this awareness. I want you to know none of us were created interrupted. At least that's my firm belief. None of us, if any of us are parents and that baby popped out, I don't know any of you who look at that child and say, you are so not good enough. None of us were created interrupted. The heart of relationship is driven by a desire within all of us to belong, and by what is stored in the subconscious and emotional parts of our brain. What drives us to attract who we attract is an interconnection between these two important factors: what we consciously desire and what we subconsciously believe. So while a big part of our hearts know that relationship is what matters the most, what we have believed subconsciously due to what we have experienced in the past often works to either help or block us from attracting who and what we need. Help to attract or block us from who or what we need. I invite you to anchor yourself in this in the beginning. It is now a trademark term, the uninterrupted self, because I believe in the efficacy of it so much. Even from a therapeutic standpoint, if I look back in the history of how we see ourselves and how we serve each other, someone shows up for therapy or in the intake, and the first question is, what's the presenting concern? None of us started on a concern solely. None of us are wholly traumatized. None of us are wholly broken. All of us have good capacity within to do this thing of relationship well, albeit it has been covered up by the self. So in the beginning, we were all created perfectly well. But what the brain has stored, which is the important factor to pay attention to, is what we have internalized that has then skewed how we then connect with each other. So I give you an example to tap into your brain capacity and what maybe is stored there. If I were to say to you right now, no one is perfect, what would you say back to me? That's true. Anybody in this room would say that's not true. We're just connecting. That's not true.
I think as humans, we are perfect. We come with flaws.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. Thank you so much. Brave space that's creating safe connection in this room. Here is the reality. If I were to say to you, your behavior does not define you, what would you say to me?
Sure.
But when we say nobody is perfect, I am, that whenever you start a sentence with I am, the mechanism of the engine of your brain internalizes identity, a matter of identity. So when I say I am not perfect, my brain takes it in as a matter of identity when I'm really speaking about a matter of behavior. You were created uninterrupted. Can you imagine how you would think about yourself in relationship with yourself if you turned up the volume on your uninterrupted self? You are perfect. The reality is that none of us get it perfectly well all the time, and that's humanity. But as a matter of your identity, you are perfect. Then life happened. I call this the interruptions. Life then interrupted what was intended, and the only oops, the biggest oops in all of our lives is that we started to see ourselves and see each other through the lens of the interruption. How many of you are from the Caribbean in this room? Thank you. You haven't seen that person in a long time and they show up and they put on about 20 pounds. How do you greet them? Right. Tell me if you have ever been in that shoes. How is that internalized? As affection, as connection? We have normalized the interruption, a culture of insult, a culture of negative projection to each other, a culture of judgment. And so, Monique, as I was sitting there and listening to you, we have adapted this definition of marginalized. It's an outside. It's the way, the act of treating someone as insignificant, as less than. The outside definition. We show up and we call ourselves minority. I grew up in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I was it. And so when I migrated and this term of minority came to me, my brain took a while. It wasn't assimilating because I was it. There were a few others, but the people looked like me. And then we move it further and said visible minority. There's nothing about me that is visible minor.
Come on now.
We have normalized, no one's perfect. We've normalized marginalized. We've normalized minority and then internalized and then behave it outwardly. You are not less than. The most important relationship that you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself. And if what you think about yourself is marginalized, what you think about yourself is minor, the brain then is set up to attract what you believe and what you repeat the most. And so the intergenerational traumas of our past that should not be minimized. In counseling language, it is called trauma invalidation. We see each other, but we don't look necessarily beneath the surface to what we are carrying and have been internalizing over time. The family dysfunction, the personal wounds that we have internalized. As women, if you grew up like I grew up, I was groomed to be single. No one told me audibly, but it was allowed in the culture. He was going to leave anyhow. So have a plan A, plan B, plan C. And so even when we get into the context of marriage as culture, we are married single. And that then, because it's silently internalized, projects itself in dysfunction in our connection. Go ahead and tell yourself the most important relationship that you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself. This is a matter of epigenetics. If you carry a Christian worldview like I do, epigenetics is what it is. Faith application, the sins of the father follow through the third and fourth generation. Here is the key. Neuroplasticity is also very real. We can become aware of what has been silently internalized, and we can revolutionize from the inside out. We can revolutionize from the inside out. Yes. It is super important that we pay attention to not neglect what has been neglected. There's none of us that live without the need to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted, to be loved, to be understood. Yet even in the example that I've just given you, the breathing that we practice in culture is minor what is meant to be highlighted from an intentional place. How many of you, no judgment in the room, communicate by text or email without mentioning the name of the person you're speaking to? We have normalized a culture in our everyday of not seeing each other, of not acknowledging each other. The fundamental tapestry of relational wellness in an everyday. Lady Nicole, I love her dearly. I know that butterflies are very important to her and to the heart of who she is. About 99.9% of the messages I send to Lady Nicole has a butterfly attached to it. Why? I want her to know intentionally that I see her. She's never told me send every message with a butterfly. No, but I saw her. And I want to let her know that I see you. In the everyday way, we can interrupt what has been internalized unwittingly from the past. The next time you send someone a text, start with their name. And better yet, add a sentiment to it. Beautiful Lady Nicole, that's how I start the messages most often. Most of us know what that means when you get a love on Facebook as opposed to a like or no response at all. It takes 30, not even seconds, 2 seconds, to hold that thing down longer to press a love. And most of us know that feeling that comes up inside when you see a love instead of a like or no response. Because all of us, I'm not saying all of you, go back and see who reacted. Because we long for connection. And there are everyday ways that we can share this important connection. Next slide. So I want you to know again what the injuries and the interruptions of the past has done to all of us. It has separated us from ourselves, capital S. It has separated us from ourselves. The neglect that has been normalized, sometimes in parenting, you run to that caregiver and they get away from me. Psychologically, in the background, it has caused us to adapt into hypoarousal, this shutdown state, this lack of connected state, because now we internalize and we model what is being familiar in our brain. So the first thing that goes when any of us have consistently internalized the interruption from the past is our identity. So thus the I am. I am not perfect. Nobody is perfect. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy. All silently operating itself beneath the surface, while what we need the most is connection with each other. The self, the uninterrupted self in most of us has been silenced. I'm drawing your attention to awakening again what is intended and what is needed. And so from an impact beneath the surface, I want you to see that the brain truly holds, protects, and projects whatever we repeat the most, whatever that is. Have you ever gone to the grocery store and you had a list that you know that you needed to get, and you say bread, eggs, sugar, bread, eggs, sugar, bread, eggs. When you get to the grocery store, what happens? I was working with a group one time and used this example, and one lady in the group said, I forget. I said, come, let's pray for you, kind of. Hold you gently. And as we chuckle, I want you to see that what happens, the brain is the engine beneath the surface of our relational connection. And when we have internalized the interruption unwittingly ongoing, it actually chips away at the capacity structure of the brain. And so I say it this way in the heart of a good thing for your benefit. Instruction without relationship to the heart of the matter is oppression. And so often we give each other instruction, go do this, go do that, go do that. But often inside we lack the capacity to apply the instruction. So prolonged pattern of collective, intergenerational, personal, or emotional wound, stress, or self-judgment, this negatively impact the brain structurally. So if we do a little bit of back in the science a little bit, the hippocampus, which is the center of memory, of new learning, shrinks. And so this capacity for new beginning. So as you're here with me, this is how this works. You're hearing me right now, and if you're plugged in, you're contemplative and you're thinking about how this applies to your life. After you leave here today, if the brain doesn't have the capacity needed, this would stay here, and then life continues as usual. How many times have you gone to a really great motivational speech, a conference, a sermon, something, and then culturally you ask somebody, how was that? They say, that was fire. And you say, what did they say? I don't know, it was just fire. This is a signal that the center of learning, of memory, of new beginnings, in essence, has low capacity. The amygdala, your emotional switchboard that is on for most of us, especially when we are triggered, is then primed more than not to see the world in this negatively impacting way. If you've ever read a post lately and you said, some people are just in your life to take from you, how many people respond to that? A lot. But isn't that the whole point, Miss Norris? People are supposed to come to you as this leader of the Congress of Black Women and say, how can you help me up as we climb? But we've been so plugged into the judgment of each other. We say, yes, girl, let them go, leave them, because they mean nothing. We're supposed to connect with each other, to be lifted up from where we are. So shifting this judgment, because now this amygdala part of your brain that views the world in this internalized negative perspective sees everyone through this yellow lens. The frontal lobe, that is your moral compass, your logical thinking center. Everyone wants to evolve. Everyone wants to grow. That everybody's been through something. That part of the brain loses its capacity to be online. Dr. Dan Siegel developed what he calls a hand model of the brain, which is a really good, quick reference. If you could do this with me, something that you could hold on to. If you look at my wrist, part of my hand, that is the brainstem, back of head. This thumb in the middle of your hand is the amygdala, the emotional storage of your past, the interruptions, because the brain holds whatever we repeat the most. These four fingers are the prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe, that logical thinking center. Everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to be lifted. All of us need to be connected and seen. This part goes offline when we are most in tough, triggered, traumatizing mode in our life. So he calls this the lid flip. The amygdala comes online maybe 3 seconds or so after you're in a tough situation. This one doesn't come online at all, or maybe at least 8 to 12 seconds later. That, if you're kind of really calculating how the brain works, that's forever. So I'm raising your attention here to what is beneath the surface that needs your attention, because the brain in its wisdom operates in rest or digest or stress, and in its wisdom both of them don't operate at the same time. So it is our duty to pay attention to what we have internalized, and to enter into this process of releasing and pruning the things that really are not meant to work in our best interest relationally, so that we can become more effective in our connection. My encouragement to you is to look beneath the surface. Look beneath the surface. Research has shown that only about 10% of our daily behavior is driven by our conscious brain. The other 90% is driven by our subconscious, the stuff that we have internalized. So while consciously all of us desire to belong, to be loved, to be seen, subconsciously we attract the familiar. of whatever has been internalized within. How many of us in this room said, looking back in your lineage, I would never be like her? How many of us have said that? And then what happened? By what mystery would you end up being and doing the same thing that consciously you said, I wouldn't, because of this 90? Pay attention to what you have internalized, and one way that we know what has been internalized is by the patterns in our lives that we relive and the cycles that are really not working for us. So I want you to see how then shows up now. My lady Nicole, could you come and help me, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'm afraid.
So in the heart of a good thing, I said it to you this way. At the heel of drawing your attention to how the strengths in culture we're called to internalize, and how we are also called to see the destructive pattern that we've also internalized. So I call this the historical woman. In summary, the destructive pattern in today's men and women reflect the relationship pattern from the historical men and women of our past, until we interrupt the interruption. When we are intentional to look through the eyes of history with ongoing awareness, we will see that while matriarchy and feminism have risen with an ideal banner of women empowerment and independence, many women have also lived an ongoing reality of violation and insecurities in the face of what they truly desire. As a result, many women have become functionally independent or single at heart and unwittingly close to the men they need. Even though women were created with a gift to nurture and connect, they have also become subconsciously withdrawn in a fight for the safety of their own hearts that have been threatened or damaged in the past. In many cases, the woman is uncertain whether he will remain present enough to protect her heart when it matters the most, so she remains closed. From this self-protective stance, she often says, I don't need him. Yet in fact, she is really resisting the pain and brokenness in her heart that he represents, a mirror of the historical man who leaves. Let's look at the man for a moment. When we are intentional to look through the eyes of history with an ongoing awareness, we'll also see that the historical man is in a struggle with his past all at the same time. He is in a battle that calls him to man up, yet without a clear model of what this means from both the historical women and men in his past. So he has very little to draw from. This reinforces the belief in his heart that he is not able or good enough to do what is needed. He fears being repeatedly emasculated in the fight that is often void of any trophy or affirmation that he deeply needs. When we look closely, we will see that at times he has found it difficult to bounce back from the historical knockouts that has immensely distorted his identity. He has now become silent, withdrawn, shut down, aggressive, and disconnected. He is unwittingly involved in relationships unfaithfully, mostly through physical touch, rather than the intimacy and vulnerability that he needs. While deep within, he desires to heal from the historical knockouts that has robbed him of the freedom he truly desires in his heart, but he fears being judged or doesn't know how. I want you to know that you're not crazy. I want you to know that you're not a bad person. I want you to know that any cycle that has been unhelpful in your life is not a mirror of who you truly are. It has all been a tap on the shoulder, inviting you to look beneath the surface. What you have unwittingly internalized generationally, personally, in your mindset, in your thinking, that is drawing your attention to revolutionize from the inside out so that you can truly experience more of what you desire and deserve. It is my opinion that the sole purpose of relationship from this vantage point is to heal forward. Relationship is where all of us have been injured somewhere or the other. Relationship is also the place where all of us are called to heal. It is our best healing portal. That's how I describe it. The purpose of relationship is to heal forward. The purpose of relationship is to heal forward. Let's start with the relationship with you. I say it this way in the heart of a good thing. One of the most relationships that you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself. Repeating again. Knowing who you are is one of the greatest gifts that you can ever give to yourself and to others as well. Knowing who you are is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself and to others as well. Rediscover you. Rediscover who you really are. I meet individuals in their older life often and I say, who are you? Ask yourself that question. Who am I really, really? And often the comeback is, that's a good question. I don't know. No judgment. Because often we have been so long separated from that true, uninterrupted self within. If you work with me, I have a robust subconscious exercise that I take you through. And what Lady Nicole was talking about, when I show up and introduce myself from that value, I'm telling you who I am, not what I do. Because God forbid I become incapacitated tomorrow and I no longer do what I do, I'm still the value of who I am. Of who I am. You're not what you do. Go ahead and put your hand on your chest as a sign of reconnecting with yourself in this moment. Next slide. And go ahead and whisper to yourself, I am enough. Go ahead and whisper to yourself, I am enough. Oh, yes. Go ahead and turn up the volume on that. I am more than enough. This word enough comes from this old English word that means you are sufficient. You are all that is required or needed to be you. You are all that is required or needed to be the you that you've been created to be, to fulfill the purpose that you have been created to fulfill. Only that the interruption of life comes up, I am not enough. I am not good enough. All of us have had days when we've thought that. What I'm inviting you to is to reconnect with this relationship with yourself, that you trumpet the conclusion on those days that I am enough. There is a EFT one-liner strategy, even though right now I'm thinking I'm not enough, I choose to believe I am enough. So even though fill in the blank, I choose. So you make a conscious choice every day to live consciously. Conscious choice. So that 1090 that I described to you is not static. As you bring the subconscious to consciousness, that 10 could become 20. That 10 could become 30. That's the process of healing. I'm empowering you in the relationship with yourself. Comparison is a thief. It is a thief of secure connection with yourself. It is a thief of purpose. All of us at some point in time just look on social media is a thief. Often. You scroll and you're like, must be nice, that's not me. If you're going to compare yourself only to yourself. If you're going to compare, you have a unique value within you that can never be devalued. Wherever you go, show up as yourself. Show up as yourself. Here's a fun fact. That person you secretly compare yourself to, they're comparing themselves to, and maybe they're admiring you. Choose to think that. Choose to think that. Ask yourself if this is the interruption for you mostly on a daily basis. Ask yourself, how am I doing today compared to last week? I may be not where I want to be ultimately, but I'm not where I was. Compare yourself only with yourself. The late Dr. Sue Johnson, next slide, said it this way. We decide who we are when we gaze into the eyes of those we love. I reframe this quote this way. Culturally specific or sensitive or aware. We decide who we are when we gaze into the eyes of those who are meant to love us. You are meant to love me, and I am meant to love you. When you don't see me, it affects how I see myself. When you don't call my name, it affects how I see myself. When you don't interact with me with affection, care, love, and understanding, it affects how we see ourselves. It affects how we see ourselves. Where have you been gazing? Where have you been gazing? Where have you been gazing? Next slide. I invite you to the strategy that has been revolutionary in my own life, inside out. Years ago, when I was in this space, there were some colleagues of mine that was doing some amazing things. I was like, oh, must be nice. She can do that. I'm not doing that. And then I just heard that quiet, uninterrupted voice within me. Show up in your value. Show up in your value. One day I said, I should go to that event. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to go. And I was like, that quiet voice in me said, go to that event. And I went to the event. Do you know what happened? I really wanted to empower your hearts today in your relationship with self. Do you know what happened? All of the amazing angled pictures that I saw on social media was not what was happening in the room. So the perception that is mirrored by the interruption creates more of an interruption and then isolate you from the connection that you need with the other. I am inviting you to gaze in this direction. If you were to go to my room, then I had sticky notes on my bookcase everywhere on the side of my bed. I open my eyes in the morning, I look. You are enough. You are more than enough. You are invaluable. You are more than valuable. And when I started to repeat those, it felt incredibly uncomfortable. Why? I call this good discomfort in my work. You would know when you are realigning in revolution by this level of good discomfort, because it's saying on the inside of who you are, this is missing. I am strategy. Put it where you can see it and repeat it. An outside brain. When the inside needs to be restored, you create an outside. Next slide. So I want you to know that here is the mystery in your relationship connection. My beautiful lady Nicole, I'm picking on you. My Lord, come please. Hold this one in.
She wants you.
We're winding down, I promise. And maybe you can both stand here for the benefit of the recording. I think one down, if you can.
Over there.
Yes.
You get it?
Awesome. Give us that.
Okay.
Right, very good. This is how this now behaves in our connection with others. And so the slide that's behind, I call him my Lord as a sign of affection and deep admiration and affirmation. The mystery in our relationship connection or attraction is that we subconsciously attract the kinds of relationship that will love us, but also bring up the wounds to the surface. This is because we can only heal what is revealed. You've ever had a stomach ache, and from a West Indian perspective, it's been going on for a while. The first thing that we think, drink some ginger tea. That's a good thing, drink some ginger tea. But if that continues, and it's been months on end, most of us have the wisdom enough to go to a doctor. And a good doctor has the wisdom enough to send you to an x-ray or ultrasound. We get curious when we see this pattern, but emotionally somehow we shut down and we stay silent. So all of us desire to be loved, so we attempt to connect with each other. And so if you could turn towards each other for me. Very good. And so we start to approach each other because we desire love and connection. As we now approach the flip. the script flips. Because the closer we get, no, you're good. Oh, thank you. The closer we get, the subconscious part starts to come up because it needs to be revealed for the purpose of healing forward. When we don't have this level of awareness, however, that this is coming up because it needs to be healed, what happens instead? We create injury and then we create the cycle all over again. So as they get closer, female relationship, work relationship, marriage relationship, all of it, relationship with others. So that's why we started on self. If I'm good with self, I'm going to know that this is coming up to invite me to the next level of relational connection and healing. And so go ahead and read what we see as we got closer.
Sexual violation, judged, silenced, rejection, not valued, depression, high functioning, anxiety, isolate, insecurity, low self-esteem.
Tell me what you see when you got closer.
Intergenerational trauma, abandonment, I am not good enough, addiction, mental health struggle, emotionally disconnected.
And so because we attract who we need, the people that have been in your life is the people you need. Those that you've judged and said it just came to take from me, that you need those people because they might have been coming up to teach you boundaries. Not for rejection because we just recreate the cycle. The closer we get is the more, so we're getting close, is the more now this starts to face off with each other. When we have this good level of awareness, we will flip and say, I see your trauma and I'm going to love you to life just like my grandmother did for me. I see your trauma and I'm going to love you into your next level of healing. I see that behavior. I was working with a couple recently, and the husband in this couple said, I see it now. Being myself is safe. And what he was really saying is being myself, being kind, being present, because that's who he really is at heart. But when he sees this behavior, West Indian language, he says she's misbehaving. So I ignore her. She becomes more desperate and reach, and he withdraws more. If you have this level of awareness, you will show up with this, oh, I get it now. If I hold her, even in what seems like misbehavior, she now gets the support she needs to re-regulate the nervous system, and now we are more connected because love. What happens instead when I do this, and I will crush the paper for you today, is that we approach this way instead, without seeing the need to bring on consciousness, and then this is what creates the destruction in our connection. Thank you so much. So in the heart of everything, what I invited you to see from what I call the destructive pattern in relationship is that maybe I could have just 7 of you quickly just come. I know time is sensitive. Miss Monique, could you come please? And if you could give successively the next person. So you hold this first one and then give the second. Very good. Thank you so much. And then hold the first here and then give pass over. Very good.
Need somebody else?
7, yes, one more maybe. Thank you so much, everybody. So what I described to you, the uninterrupted self is outside of this cycle, and as we work on maintaining and turning up the volume on our uninterrupted self, rediscover who we are. That's the second step in the healing process. Then it gives us capacity to heal. But what we have been living instead is what I call the destructive pattern. When the interruption remains unhealed, the first thing that goes for all of us is our identity. It distorts our identity. From an integrated spiritual place, we'll see that that's what happened, that we call commonly the fall. The identity was distorted. That is what now the brain takes in and stores. It becomes a comprehensive storage of the past, of how you have perceived yourself and then in turn perceive others, because the wound of what has been intergenerational, collective, personal trauma internalized and seemingly silent, but it has really in fact silenced who we are. Then that is what misaligns us and disempowers us, the labels that we use systemically. Now it becomes normalized because we have been misaligned and disempowered from who we are. That now is what shows up as judgment. From a clinical standpoint, I am very aware that when I hear judgment of self, judgment of others, shame or blame, it is pointing right back to an interruption that has been remained unhealed. This is what then shows up as the pattern of mental health in my estimation. I truly believe that all of the patterns of mental health, anxiety, depression, not solely but in part, has been the accumulation of the pattern of unhealed in the past. So we shut down. Sometimes the overactivation of our nervous system is really a shutdown, and then the hypoarousal shutdown. And then the last stage of this destructive pattern I call entrapment, when the abnormal becomes the norm. I want to empower you with awareness today that truly brings on the level of revelation. Thank you so much again, Ms. Monique. That will cause you to leave here today with whatever capacity you have within to revolutionize from inside out. If you have a copy of the Heart of a Gifted, this is on page 34. I invite everyone that I work with to earmark it. This is one of the clear ways that you know that there's a tap on your shoulder when you're judging yourself, judging others, that there is something that has been distorted and misaligned, something that has been stored subconsciously, something that has distorted your identity that needs to be healed. It's a common way. So all of us engage in some judgment on a daily basis. In my therapeutic practice, I say it very often, no judgment, just awareness. No judgment, just awareness. It helps people to then show up in capacity. Thank you so much. We're winding down. Next slide, please. So as I empower you practically today, at least through this awareness and applying this, how it applies to your life, I want you to again see the 1090. Whenever behavior is immoderate, as in somebody's really shut down or overactivated, a person that you think is aggressive, we call it angry. Every emotion is a good messenger. Write that down. Every emotion is a good messenger. That person who is, we say angry really when someone behave aggressive. So anger is a good emotion. We've been socialized to behave it as aggression. And that's not the only way to behave anger. Whenever the emotion is immoderate, over the top or shut down, it really is an invitation for you to look beneath the surface. None of us are bad people. I'll tell you a not so secret. I worked as a therapist in probation and parole for many years in the past. And I have sat before pedophiles with this level of awareness. If I showed up judgmental, I was very aware from this level of awareness that I would be putting more children at risk. I would be participating in more children being at risk. That I showed up non-judgmental and supported in a safe way to really look beneath the surface. I acknowledge from this level of healing that I wasn't just helping one person, but I was helping many behind the scenes. If the behavior is immoderate, look beneath the surface so that you can truly see the need. What's the need? So I share with you in wrap up, next slide, the methodology that I developed as a simplified first step with those that I work with. It is 3 A's. The beginning A is awareness. Be curious what's really happening beneath the surface. The second A is accountability. This means what's the genuine need? If I know what is happening beneath the surface, what's the need? And then the last A is aligned action. All of us act, but not aligned to what is needed because often we lack this good awareness of what's happening beneath the surface. So whenever you feel tender or you're triggered, even in this moment, hold yourself gracefully. Feel whatever it is that's coming up. Be curious about what that emotion means, what the good message is, and choose to do one aligned action that supports you to heal. Now let's wrap up here. Last slide. Go ahead and hand on your chest and say with me, I am enough. I am worthy. I am lovable. I'm ready to release any unhealthy belief of myself that I've held for years. I deserve to experience more of what I desire in relationship. Today, I make a choice to fully accept and love myself well. Last slide. I want you to know, one moment at a time. One moment at a time. More of what you deeply desire and deserve. It is possible. Go ahead and tell yourself, it is possible. It is possible. I am Andrea Boweya, and I'm passionate about supporting our community to heal without judgment and to truly experience more of what you deeply desire and deserve through inner healing. It was my pleasure to be with you today.